Dear Mr. Speaker, dear members of Parliament, dear ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, labas rytas. I'm very grateful to be here today with you, to have the opportunity to speak about one of the most important policies we have in the European Union. As Mr. Motuzas has said, enlargement is not about geography, it is about our values. Thank you for this. That's why when I speak about the enlargement, for me, this is much more than just the enlargement. And I will explain it to you. What do I mean? I'm for the first time in Vilnius as Commissioner for Enlargement, but it is somehow like coming home. Lithuania has been very present during the first year of my tenure. Literally, my neighbor in my office in Brussels is my dear friend Andrius Kubilius, a great ambassador for your country, and it brings Lithuania to my corridor at the Berlaymont. But more importantly, your country, Lithuania, is a true policy driver in Brussels. And this is also the case for enlargement priorities. Your country has turned EU membership into a resounding success. You, your country, have seized the chance, put in the hard work and transform your country into a stable and prosperous European nation that moved from 50% of the average European GDP in 2004 to more than 90% in 20 years of membership. And you are an example to our candidate countries. To the Republic of Moldova, for instance, the past year we have invested a great deal of our time and effort to counter Russian narratives and interference in this small republic squeezed between Ukraine and Romania. I have spent many days there, and during my travels to the country, I was told that a small nation like Moldova, this was the Russian narrative, we have studied a lot, risked losing its autonomy in the EU. Second narrative from Russia has been that European financial assistance would make Moldova dependent on foreign nations. And the third narrative has been, and we are seeing this all around the candidate countries, that once Moldova will become a member of the EU, the people of Moldova will lose their identity. All of these fears, aggressively planted by the Kremlin's propaganda factories, could easily be turned around by impressive track record of your great Lithuania. Your country is a living example how those who left the Russian orbit also left poverty and insecurity and entered growth, prosperity and stability. And I could use your example how a country who has been a part of the Soviet Union, as Moldova has been, has successfully gone its European way. So I can say, in my opinion, you are the living fear of the autocrats in Moscow, what can be done if a country goes a European way. But if I go back to the past, this is exactly what the European project has always been about: to preserve peace, freedom and prosperity in Europe. All Europeans need to stand together. And this is how the European project began in the 1950s. If I look back to the year of 2004, when your country and also my country, smaller country than yours, Slovenia, became a member of the EU, I can say that for Slovenia we have seen our entering in the EU mostly through the economic glasses. What kind of better prosperity the EU membership will bring us. At that time, we didn't speak about Europe being a peace project. My mother was born in 1932, and I grew up in the communist country of Yugoslavia. And whenever we have had troubles at home, my mother was saying, as long as there is no war, everything will be okay. At some point, we were really telling to our mother, Mama, stop. There will be no war anymore. It is the end. Until it happened. And it happened on the day when my country, Slovenia, declared its independence. So it was 25th of June in 1991, when 3 hours after we declared our independence, the tanks of the Yugoslav army rolled up. My mother is already dead, so she cannot see that we have a war in Ukraine. But so many times I remember her words, and I'm kind of ashamed that we were talking to her like in the sense, come on, stop, Mama, it will never happen again. And this is why I see enlargement today much more than only making our European Union bigger in square kilometers and in the numbers of people. When we decided to live together or to build our European Union after the Second World War, it was not at the beginning the political project, but later, every time we faced big geopolitical changes, enlargement was a central part of the answer. For instance, in the 1980s, at the end of the dictatorships in Portugal, in Spain, and in Greece, we have been able to integrate those countries in the EU. And in the early 2000s, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, after the end of the Cold War, we have been able, for the first time, to integrate countries like you, like my Slovenia. And today, we are already and again seeing this huge geopolitical realignment, namely the pressure we are feeling today, and this is clear after what happened in the last days. We are squeezed in the pressure coming from the east, but also from the west. We see Russia determined to reassert itself and carve out a sphere of influence on our continent. And we see a concerted attack on the European structures that brought peace and prosperity to our continent. We know that for some, a strong, united Europe is not in their interest. That's why they are trying to do everything, first to destabilize our candidate countries, like in Moldova, and of course, but the main target, it's us, the European Union. But we should be united as never before. We Europeans can only shape our own future if we act together. And for Europe, a Europe that does more to take control of its own security and protect its prosperity, enlargement will be a central part of the answer. When I speak about enlargement, it's more than enlargement. For me, I'm telling you, I'm really having the best job possible in the world because it is happening in the time of these big geopolitical changes. Why? If we do the enlargement right today, we have the possibility for the first time in the history to unify our Europe. So the goal of this enlargement process is unification of Europe if we do it right. And we should do it right. But I also have to admit that the politics of enlargement has changed over time. Despite all that enlargement has brought to our continent, or perhaps exactly because it is a force that drives change, it comes all too often with the negative associations in too many of our member states. And that's why we need to take these associations seriously, and we need to break them. For instance, there is a narrative spread around that EU enlargement will ruin our European Union. But let's talk facts. The most advanced is Montenegro. We could finish the negotiation process until the end of 26. Montenegro has 600,000 people. It's like Vilnius. So, for me, in my eyes, entering Montenegro in the EU cannot ruin us. Ukraine and all the others, we will have to talk about it. But you know, when we hear those lies, you will not be able to enlarge, they will ruin you. No, we just have to do it, right. So, what does it mean when I say we have to do it right? I see three strands of work as we move forward. First, and very important is, and both speakers before me, Madam Rasa and Mr. Remigius were speaking about this, is any progress we make with our future member states must be credible, achievement-based or merit-based, as you have said. So, overall, 2025 was a good year for enlargement, a year when we a lot moved forward. And significant advances have been made in 4 countries, Montenegro, Albania, Ukraine and Moldova. And this shows that reforms pay off. And this is the path we need to continue to build trust. We know that Lithuania is one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine, and I'm thanking you for this. But we also know how difficult the situation in Ukraine is right now. On the other hand, we should do everything to bring the country, who is also fighting for the European values, to become a member of the European Union. Ukraine is a country, for the first time in the history, that we are negotiating the accession process with a country which is at war. So in spite of bombs falling on the country, they are walking the accession way. One of the strands they have been successful, but still a lot needs to be done, is fighting corruption. Sometimes, yes, this road is full of bumps, but fighting corruption, building democratic institutions are among the toughest steps that our candidates, all of the candidates, need to take. We now want to accelerate those reforms in Ukraine, because if democratic structures are weak or the rule of law is defective, it can open the door to malign influence, to organized crime, and ultimately weaken the country's defense. Tomorrow, I will travel to Lviv to discuss with the government of Ukraine a 10-step plan of reform priorities. And all those steps will prioritize work on strengthening the rule of law and also fighting corruption. At the same time, we need to make sure that the new funding mechanism the Commission has proposed to meet Ukraine's military and budget needs for the next 2 years continue to accelerate the same reforms. I'm speaking about the use of the frozen assets, which is a bold step, but a necessary one. And this step shifts the responsibility, and this is very important to know, from the EU taxpayers, so it is your money, it is our money, to Russia and aggressor. Russia has to pay for the damage it has caused in Ukraine. So this new mechanism will build on Ukraine facility, which is our main financial tool to support Ukraine's economy. And it is also the main tool to preserve our credibility while navigating the bumpy path of turning the country into a modern nation. I'm also responsible for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Based on the estimation of the World Bank, the reconstruction will cost us more than $500 billion. But we will not be able to finance this reconstruction just by the taxpayers' money. So we have to involve also the private businesses. Today in the afternoon, I'm meeting representatives of your different associations. That's why you see it is so much important that we really are taking care of the rule of law, or I could say the legal certainty, that the companies will not be afraid to invest because they will know that their money is safe. The second strand I was talking about, what to do right, is EU needs to get ready for new members. It has to do with how EU27 is getting ready for newcomers. The accession of new member states in the coming year is a realistic perspective. Your country will have the presidency in the first half of 2027. This could be the time when we will finish the technical part of the negotiations for Montenegro, meaning that your country will be in the high speed of preparing the accession treaty for Montenegro. So we need to gear up and prepare our union. We need to know what the impact of future enlargement will be on key policy areas, our budget and our governance structures. And we have to make sure that our union of 30 members will be effective and operate smoothly. Past enlargement has taught us that we need strong assurances that new members continue to respect the rule of law, also years after the accession. And now I'm coming to a very important part which will also be a part of your work here in the Parliament. Namely, we need to have a very open discussion without the taboos about what kind of guarantees we will write into future accession treaties. For instance, we are now discussing that even Russia is not opposing Ukraine becoming a member of the EU. But for all the other countries, how can we make sure, and I was speaking in one interview about this, that I don't want to go into the history as a commissioner who has brought Trojan horses into the European Union who will ruin us after 5, 10 or 15 years, not following what we are demanding from them now. So for the first time in the history, and this is also the distinction to the past enlargement processes, it is not only about bringing candidate countries into the EU, it is about taking care of us, that we will be stronger, not weaker, once we get them on board. So, in my view, we have to have special safeguards for the new member states that go unnoticed to our new member states when everyone respects their responsibilities. But these safeguards at the same time should bite hard if they will not respect those same rules. So this is the discussion probably you will also have, or we will have in your parliament. Once again, this is a necessary step to build trust in all EU member states that the integrity of our union will be protected. The third part of what needs to be done right, it's time to integrate future members much deeper and faster into our union. Both of the speakers before have been speaking about the gradual integration. We know that candidate countries need time to reform, and sometimes our member states need time to decide. And this is then, in this discrepancy between the geopolitical needs, where it will be the best to integrate all the candidate countries immediately, but on the other hand, they have to deliver. So how do we cope with these discrepancies? For instance, Ukraine and other candidates have no time to wait for the benefits of belonging to the EU. They need our protection now. For instance, North Macedonia has become a candidate country in 2005. If Ukraine will wait that long to start the negotiations, we would start negotiating with Ukraine in 2045. So these are the relations we cannot accept today. So we have to protect our candidate countries today. Many of them are increasingly exposed to foreign interference, economic coercion, and also hybrid threats, which directly affects our own security and stability. And we need to step up our game and neutralize foreign interference in our candidate countries. For instance, we have done this in Moldova. I have been accused that this was a clear interference from the European Commission in the internal affairs of Moldova because we have helped this country to fight the Russian hybrid war. Really? Interference? We didn't say a word when UK decided to go out. We didn't even say, please stay, we love you. We didn't say anything when Georgia had problems. So now when we finally help Moldova, some people call this interference. No, for me this is really protecting their democracy and protecting also us. Can you imagine, you are now smiling, very kind of you, thank you, but you know, can you imagine that the Russians will come back to Moldova? We cannot let this happen. So this is why, for me, this is not interference. And we are now already preparing to help also Armenia. It is also in my portfolio for Eastern Partnership, how to do this. So I'm speaking about the gradual integration. European Commission has just adopted a strategy which is called Democracy Shield. If you would have asked me 15 years back if we need a special strategy to protect our democracy, I would clearly say no, but today we need it. We also are planning a media resilience plan. If you would have asked me 15 years back if we need it, of course I would say no, but we need it. Why? Because the first thing autocrats are after is free media, it is civil society organizations, and it's also powerful women. I see some of you in this hall. So, we need to integrate our candidates as much as possible, also before they will become a member of the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming to the end. To make future enlargement a success, Europe needs Lithuanian support in all of these areas. You are a policy driver in a union. I was telling you Slovenia is even smaller than you, but you know, it's not about being small. It is about how strong your influence is. And I'm happy that I can count on your country in Brussels when we do the enlargement process. And this comes with a responsibility to help our union to evolve, and as we have entered a new phase of the history of our continent. The fear I have is, if we fail today, this will ruin our credibility. This is exactly what the autocrats want. They don't want us to succeed. So we have to fight back. That's why I count on you. And to drive the reforms we need in all our candidate countries, and particularly in Ukraine, so that we can build trust between existing and future member states. So I call upon your help to build trust between Ukraine and many other member states. This is essential for us Europeans to take our future in our own hands. I was talking about being pressured from the East and also from the West. Some people say that this is a tragedy. In my opinion, it is not. It is a great opportunity that we stand on our feet, that we get more independent, and that we, in the future, will easier say that Europe is a superpower, not just in the economic sense, but also community of values. I count on you to turn this transformative power you displayed at home over the past 20 years into a force for change in Europe. Every country counts for me, but especially you, especially those countries who really are supportive for the enlargement. Thank you. Thank you.